In the heart of medieval England, a time of great kings, corrupt officials, and deep forests, the legend of Robin Hood was born. It was a time when the poor were heavily taxed, the rich grew more powerful, and injustice seemed to rule the land. But amidst this darkness, there was one figure who stood as a beacon of hope for the common folk, a man who defied the tyranny of the rulers and fought for the oppressed. His name was Robin Hood. The stories of Robin Hood have been passed down through the generations, whispered by the fireside and sung in ballads, each tale growing in the telling. He is known as the heroic outlaw who roamed the lush greenwood of Sherwood Forest, stealing from the rich to give to the poor, always one step ahead of the law. His unmatched skill with a bow and arrow, his loyalty to his band of merry men, and his unwavering sense of justice have made him a beloved figure in folklore. But beyond the archery and daring escapades lies a deeper story, one of friendship, loyalty, and the fight for fairness in a world where power often crushed the powerless. As the legend goes, Robin Hood was a man who cared deeply for the people. Whether he was a nobleman wronged by the crown or a commoner driven to outlawry by unjust laws, the tales agree on one thing: Robin Hood's heartbeat for those who had no voice. From the depths of Sherwood Forest, he waged his quiet rebellion, striking fear into the hearts of the greedy and bringing joy to the poor who had so long suffered under the weight of oppressive taxes. Alongside Robin Hood stood a band of loyal companions, the merry men, who shared his commitment to justice and his readiness to challenge the powerful. There was Little John, as strong as he was loyal, the jovial but fearless Friar Tuck, the bold and quick-witted Will Scarlet, and, of course, the brave and kind Maid Marian, Robin's love and steadfast partner in his quest. Together, they made Sherwood Forest a haven for those who sought refuge from the cruelty of the Sheriff of Nottingham and the oppressive rule of Prince John. But Robin Hood's story is not only one of daring raids and cunning escapes. It is a story that has endured because of the values it represents: fairness, loyalty, and the belief that no one is too small or powerless to stand up against injustice. In the face of overwhelming odds, Robin Hood and his band of merry men continued their fight, always believing that their efforts, however small, could make a difference. As we begin this journey through the many tales of Robin Hood, let us imagine the dense, ancient trees of Sherwood Forest stretching overhead, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, and the quiet rustling of the wind through the branches. In this peaceful setting, Robin Hood waits, bow in hand, ready to strike against the forces of greed and corruption, always with a smile on his face and the hope of a better world in his heart. In the tales that have been passed down for centuries, the true origins of Robin Hood remain a mystery. Some say he was a nobleman, perhaps Robert of Locksley, stripped of his lands and title by a corrupt crown. Others claim he was born a commoner, a man driven to the life of an outlaw by unjust laws and taxes that favored the rich and oppressed the poor. Whatever his beginnings, all the stories agree on one thing. Robin Hood's journey began with a deep sense of injustice and a determination to fight for those who had no voice. Robin Hood made his home in Sherwood Forest, a vast and ancient woodland that stretched across the county of Nottinghamshire. The forest was both a refuge and a stronghold, a place where Robin and his growing band of followers could evade the law and plan their daring raids on the wealthy and powerful. Sherwood became a symbol of freedom, its towering trees and hidden glades offering protection to those who, like Robin Hood, sought to resist the oppression of the ruling class. Life in Sherwood was not without its hardships. As outlaws, Robin and his companions lived outside the protection of the law, constantly hunted by the Sheriff of Nottingham, the king's enforcer, who had made it his mission to capture Robin and bring him to justice. But despite the dangers, Robin Hood thrived in the forest. His skill with a bow and arrow became legendary. So precise was his aim that he could split a willow branch in two from great distances. His mastery of the longbow was unmatched, and it became both his weapon of choice and his symbol of resistance. As word of Robin's exploits spread, others began to join him in the forest, drawn by his cause and his courage. First came Little John, a giant of a man known for his strength and loyalty. Though their first meeting began with a duel on a narrow bridge, Little John quickly became Robin's closest friend and trusted second in command. Then came Will Scarlet, a hot-tempered and quick-witted fighter, and Friar Tuck, a jovial yet fearless man of the cloth who, despite his religious vows, had no qualms about taking up arms for Robin's cause. Together, these men formed the core of the Merry Men, a band of outlaws bound by their commitment to justice and their loyalty to Robin Hood. As their numbers grew, so did their reputation. Robin Hood and his merry men became known throughout Nottinghamshire and beyond as defenders of the poor and champions of the oppressed. They would swoop down from the forest, ambushing wealthy merchants and corrupt officials, taking their ill-gotten gains and distributing the wealth among those who needed it most. The people of Nottinghamshire, tired of the crushing taxes and the cruelty of the sheriff, came to see Robin Hood not as a criminal, but as a hero, a man who stood up for them when no one else would. But Robin's fight was not just against the Sheriff of Nottingham. His true enemy was Prince John, the usurper to the English throne, who had seized power while King Richard the Lionheart was away on crusade. Prince John's rule was marked by greed and cruelty, and he imposed heavy taxes on the people to fund his lavish lifestyle and maintain control over the kingdom. Robin Hood's defiance of Prince John and his officials was not just an act of rebellion. It was a statement of loyalty to King Richard, the rightful king, whose return Robin and his followers hoped for. The legend of Robin Hood, as it grew, became more than just the story of an outlaw in the woods. It became a tale of resistance, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there are those who will stand up for what is right. Whether born of nobility or poverty, Robin Hood's origins were less important than his deeds. He had become a symbol of hope for the people of England, a hero whose courage, cleverness, and compassion would be remembered for generations to come. As the legend of Robin Hood grew, so did his band of followers. No longer was he a lone outlaw in the vastness of Sherwood Forest. Around him gathered a group of like-minded individuals, each drawn to Robin's cause of fighting injustice and protecting the innocent. Together, they became known as the Merry Men, a loyal and fearless band who shared in Robin's daring exploits and helped to shape his legend. Among the first to join Robin's ranks was Little John, a man whose size and strength were matched only by his loyalty and good humor. Their first meeting, as the story goes, was hardly friendly. The two men met on a narrow bridge over a river, where neither was willing to give way. What began as a disagreement quickly turned into a duel, with Robin and Little John exchanging blows with quarterstaffs. Despite Robin's skill, it was Little John who ultimately bested him, knocking him into the river. But rather than part as enemies, the two men laughed at their fight, and Robin, impressed by Little John's strength and character, invited him to join the merry men. From that day forward, Little John became Robin's right-hand man and closest friend, a towering figure of strength and loyalty in the band. Next came Will Scarlet, a fiery and quick-witted young man known for his sharp tongue and sharper sword. Some stories say that Will was Robin's cousin, while others suggest that he was a nobleman who, like Robin, had been wronged by Prince John's corrupt officials. Regardless of his origins, Will's loyalty to Robin was unwavering, and his boldness and bravery made him a valuable member of the merry men. Will Scarlet was known for his red cloak and his fierce temper, but beneath his fiery exterior was a heart committed to the cause of justice. Perhaps one of the most unusual of Robin's companions was Friar Tuck, a jovial and stout man of the cloth. Despite his religious vows, Tuck was no stranger to the pleasures of life. He enjoyed good food, drink, and the occasional bit of mischief. Robin first encountered Friar Tuck while he was crossing a river, seeking a guide through the forest. Tuck, seemingly helpful, offered to carry Robin across the water on his back. But once they reached the middle of the river, the friar mischievously tossed Robin into the water, much to Robin's surprise. Rather than take offense, Robin was impressed by the friar's boldness, and, after a good-natured scuffle, he invited Tuck to join the merry men. Tuck's knowledge of religion and his skill in combat, despite his rotund appearance, made him a valuable ally. He brought not only spiritual guidance but also a hearty laugh to the campfires of Sherwood Forest. Of course, no tale of Robin Hood would be complete without Maid Marian, Robin's love and partner in his adventures. While the stories of Marian vary, she is often depicted as a noblewoman of great beauty and intelligence who shared Robin's commitment to justice. In some versions of the tale, Marian is a childhood friend of Robin's, who joins him in the forest after being wronged by the Sheriff of Nottingham. In others, she is an independent and courageous woman who aids Robin in his quest to overthrow Prince John. Regardless of her background, Marian's role in the story is that of a strong and capable woman, unafraid to stand alongside Robin and the merry men in their fight for justice. Her love for Robin was matched only by her bravery, and she often found herself in the thick of the action, using her wit and resourcefulness to outsmart the sheriff's men. Together, Robin Hood and his band of merry men turned Sherwood Forest into their sanctuary. The forest, with its towering trees and hidden clearings, became a place where the poor and oppressed could find refuge from the tyranny of the Sheriff of Nottingham. From their secret camp, deep within the woods, the merry men would plan their daring raids on wealthy convoys and corrupt officials, redistributing the stolen wealth to those who needed it most. The people of Nottinghamshire, suffering under the heavy burden of taxes and cruelty, began to see Robin Hood and his band as their protectors, heroes who stood up against the greed and corruption of Prince John's reign. Life in Sherwood was not without its dangers. The Sheriff of Nottingham, determined to capture Robin Hood and bring him to justice, sent patrols deep into the forest to hunt him down. But Robin and his merry men knew every hidden path and every secret glade, and they used their knowledge of the forest to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. Robin's skill with the bow, combined with the strength of Little John, the wit of Will Scarlet, and the cunning of Maid Marian ensured that the merry men were always ready to evade capture, turning the forest itself into their greatest ally. Though they lived as outlaws, the merry men were bound by a code of honor. They never harmed the innocent, and their raids were always targeted at the rich and corrupt. Their spoils were shared with the poor and needy, ensuring that the people of Nottinghamshire could survive the harsh taxes imposed by Prince John and the sheriff. In return, the people supported Robin Hood and his band, providing them with food, shelter, and information about the sheriff's movements. The bond between Robin Hood and his merry men was more than just a shared fight against injustice. It was a brotherhood, built on loyalty, friendship, and the belief that they could make a difference in a world where power often went unchecked. Together, they created a legend that would endure for centuries, a story of hope, courage, and the unwavering belief in the fight for what is right. The tale of Robin Hood is inseparable from his legendary conflict with the Sheriff of Nottingham. The sheriff, an ever-watchful and ruthless figure, was Prince John's enforcer, tasked with keeping order in Nottinghamshire and collecting the heavy taxes imposed on the people. He was a man of greed and cruelty, and his primary goal was to capture Robin Hood, the outlaw who had become a symbol of defiance against his oppressive rule. Time and again, the sheriff would set elaborate traps and dispatch armed patrols into Sherwood Forest. But Robin Hood was always one step ahead, outsmarting the sheriff at every turn. The sheriff's efforts to capture Robin were motivated not just by duty, but by a deep personal vendetta. Robin Hood had embarrassed him publicly on many occasions, striking at his convoys, ambushing his men, and redistributing the wealth meant to line the sheriff's coffers. It was not uncommon for Robin to leave taunting messages behind after each raid, making the sheriff the laughingstock of Nottingham. Yet, no matter how many times the sheriff failed, his desire to see Robin Hood hanged only grew stronger. One of the most famous encounters between Robin Hood and the sheriff occurred during a grand archery contest. The sheriff, knowing of Robin's legendary skill with a bow, devised a plan to lure him out of hiding. He organized a contest in Nottingham, offering a grand prize of a golden arrow to the winner. The sheriff reasoned that Robin, being the best archer in the land, would not be able to resist the challenge and would come to claim the prize, allowing the sheriff to capture him. Robin Hood, ever the strategist, knew it was a trap, but the chance to outwit the sheriff in front of the people of Nottingham was too tempting to pass up. Disguising himself as an old beggar, Robin made his way to the contest, blending in with the crowd. When his turn came, Robin stepped forward, bow in hand, and took his place among the other archers. One by one, the competitors fired their arrows, but none could match the accuracy of the disguised Robin. With a calm focus, Robin drew his bow and released his arrow. It flew through the air with perfect precision, striking the center of the target, splitting an arrow already lodged there in two. The crowd erupted in applause, marveling at the old beggar's skill. The sheriff, though suspicious, had no choice but to award the golden arrow to the mysterious archer, unaware that it was his nemesis standing before him. Robin, ever bold, accepted the prize with a grin, bowing deeply to the sheriff before disappearing into the crowd. By the time the sheriff realized he had been tricked, it was too late. Robin had vanished into Sherwood Forest, leaving the sheriff fuming with anger and humiliation. The archery contest was just one of many times Robin Hood outwitted the sheriff. The sheriff's men often ventured into the forest, hoping to capture Robin by force, but Sherwood was Robin's domain, and he knew every tree and path better than anyone. The merry men set up traps and ambushes, using the natural terrain to their advantage. Whether it was blocking a narrow pass with fallen trees or luring the sheriff's men into deep, boggy swamps, Robin's mastery of the forest made it nearly impossible for the sheriff to succeed in his attempts to capture him. On one occasion, the sheriff captured one of Robin's men, hoping to draw Robin out into the open. The prisoner was to be hanged in the town square, an example to all who would dare defy the sheriff's authority. But Robin Hood, ever loyal to his band of merry men, would not allow this injustice to go unchallenged. In the dead of night, he and his men infiltrated the town, sneaking past the guards and scaling the walls of the jail. They freed their comrade, leaving behind a mocking message for the sheriff to find in the morning. These bold rescues and daring escapes only fueled Robin's legend. The people of Nottinghamshire began to see him not just as an outlaw, but as a hero, someone who stood up to the corrupt powers that oppressed them. Robin Hood's ability to outsmart the sheriff time and again became the subject of songs and stories, spreading far beyond the borders of Nottingham. The sheriff, meanwhile, grew more desperate with each failure, resorting to increasingly ruthless measures to capture Robin, none of which succeeded. Despite the sheriff's cruelty and the constant threat of capture, Robin Hood never wavered in his commitment to justice. His raids on the sheriff's convoys continued, and with every sack of gold redistributed to the poor, Robin's legend grew. The sheriff's men became wary of venturing too deep into Sherwood, knowing that Robin and his merry men could be waiting for them at any turn. It seemed that no matter how hard the sheriff tried, he could never truly defeat Robin Hood. The feud between Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham became the stuff of legend, a story passed down through the generations. It was a tale of cunning, bravery, and defiance, a reminder that even the most powerful can be brought low by those who fight for what is right. And though the sheriff continued to pursue Robin Hood, it was clear that Robin's spirit of resistance and justice could never be captured. Robin Hood's skill with a bow and arrow was unmatched throughout all of England. His reputation as the finest archer in the land was well known, and this fact did not escape the notice of the Sheriff of Nottingham. The sheriff, always scheming to capture the elusive outlaw, devised a cunning plan to lure Robin out of Sherwood Forest and into his grasp. He announced a grand archery contest, promising a magnificent golden arrow as the prize. The sheriff was certain that Robin Hood, proud of his archery skills, would not be able to resist the challenge. The news of the contest spread quickly throughout Nottinghamshire, reaching every village and town. The sheriff's men, though eager to finally capture Robin, were skeptical. They had been outsmarted by the outlaw so many times before. But the sheriff, determined to succeed, ordered his men to prepare for Robin's inevitable appearance, setting a trap that would capture him once and for all. Meanwhile, deep within Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood and his band of merry men were discussing the contest. They knew full well that it was a trap, designed to lure Robin into the open where the sheriff's soldiers would be waiting. But despite the danger, Robin could not resist the opportunity to humiliate the sheriff on his own stage. "I shall go," Robin declared, "but I will not go as myself." Robin donned a clever disguise, dressing as an old beggar with a tattered cloak and hood pulled low over his face. With this disguise, he made his way to Nottingham, mingling with the crowds that had gathered to watch the contest. His men, staying hidden in the forest, wished him luck, knowing that their leader's sharp mind and unmatched skill would see him through. The day of the contest arrived, and the fields outside Nottingham Castle were filled with spectators. The sheriff, dressed in his finest robes, looked out over the crowd, his eyes scanning for any sign of Robin Hood. But all he saw were common folk, archers from the surrounding villages and towns, eager to prove their skill in front of the sheriff and his court. The contest began, and the first rounds saw many archers eliminated. Some hit their marks, others missed, but none displayed the precision and confidence of the old beggar who quietly took his place among the competitors. His arrows flew straight and true, each one finding its target with perfect accuracy. As the rounds continued, the crowd began to murmur about the mysterious archer. Who was this old man who seemed to shoot with the skill of a much younger warrior? As the final round approached, only a few archers remained, the old beggar among them. The sheriff watched intently, still unaware that the man standing before him was his greatest enemy. With a smile on his face, the old beggar stepped up to the mark, drawing his bow with calm confidence. His eyes focused on the target far in the distance, and with a steady hand he released his arrow. The arrow flew through the air, cutting through the wind in a perfect arc, before striking the very center of the target. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, for never had they seen such a shot. The sheriff, though suspicious, had no choice but to declare the old beggar the winner of the contest. The golden arrow, gleaming in the sunlight, was handed to the mysterious archer. As Robin accepted the prize, he couldn't resist a small, clever jab at the sheriff. Bowing deeply, Robin spoke in a voice that masked his identity. "My thanks to the Sheriff of Nottingham for this fine prize. I shall treasure it always, for its value is not in the gold, but in the honor of winning it fairly." The sheriff, still oblivious, nodded curtly, thinking only of how his trap had failed to lure out Robin Hood. As Robin turned to leave, the sheriff's soldiers, who had been watching closely, began to notice something familiar about the old beggar's movements and his incredible skill with the bow. Whispers spread among them. Could this be Robin Hood in disguise? But before anyone could act, Robin made his way into the crowd, blending in with the common folk and disappearing as swiftly as he had come. By the time the sheriff realized the truth, Robin Hood was already on his way back to Sherwood Forest, the golden arrow safely tucked away in his cloak. The sheriff was furious, not only because he had failed once again to capture his elusive nemesis, but also because Robin had embarrassed him in front of the entire town. The people of Nottingham, unaware of the sheriff's plot, cheered the victory of the humble old beggar. But behind closed doors, the sheriff's rage grew, and he vowed that the next time Robin Hood appeared, he would not escape so easily. Back in Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood was greeted with laughter and cheers from his merry men. They had watched from afar, marveling at Robin's bravery and skill. Little John clapped him on the back. "I knew you'd outsmart the sheriff once again, Robin, but to win his prize right under his nose, that was a masterstroke." Robin, with a grin on his face, handed the golden arrow to Maid Marian, who had watched the contest in disguise alongside the merry men. "This golden arrow belongs to us all," Robin said, "for it is a reminder that no matter how powerful our enemies, they can be bested with cleverness and courage." the archery contest became one of the most famous tales of Robin Hood's legend. It was not just a victory of skill, but of wit and audacity. Robin had not only won the contest, but had done so in a way that made the people cheer for him, further cementing his place as a hero in their eyes. For the people of Nottinghamshire, Robin Hood was more than just an outlaw. He was a symbol of resistance against tyranny, a man who fought for the rights of the poor and downtrodden, even in the face of overwhelming odds. And so, Robin Hood's legend continued to grow. The Sheriff of Nottingham, humiliated but more determined than ever, would stop at nothing to capture him. But for Robin, the victory at the archery contest was just one more step in his ongoing quest to challenge injustice, protect the people, and outwit those who sought to harm them. At the heart of Robin Hood's adventures in Sherwood Forest, there was one person who stood beside him through every raid, every escape, and every battle: Maid Marian. Her story is as central to the legend of Robin Hood as the Merry Men or the struggle against the Sheriff of Nottingham. Maid Marian was not only Robin's love, but also his equal, a figure of bravery, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty to the cause of justice. The origins of Maid Marian are as varied as the tales of Robin Hood himself. In some versions, she is portrayed as a high-born lady of great beauty and grace, raised in the courts of England, where she learned the ways of the aristocracy, but never lost her sense of fairness and compassion for the common people. In others, she is said to have grown up alongside Robin in the countryside, the two of them childhood friends who shared a deep bond even before their fates brought them together in Sherwood Forest. Regardless of her background, the tales agree on one thing. Maid Marian was as committed to the fight against injustice as Robin Hood himself. Marian's role in Robin's life went far beyond that of a mere companion. She was a skilled archer, a brilliant strategist, and someone who was not afraid to challenge the sheriff's men when the need arose. There are countless stories of Marian disguising herself to infiltrate the sheriff's court, gathering valuable information that would help Robin and the Merry Men plan their next raid. In many ways, she was the unseen hand behind some of their greatest victories, working in the shadows to ensure that justice prevailed. One such tale tells of how Marian, while still living in Nottingham, learned of a plot by the sheriff to capture Robin Hood during one of his raids on a wealthy nobleman's convoy. Risking her own safety, Marian sent word to Robin in Sherwood Forest, warning him of the trap that awaited. Thanks to her warning, Robin and his men were able to turn the tables on the sheriff, ambushing his soldiers instead and escaping unscathed. From that moment on, Marian became an integral part of Robin's band, using her intelligence and courage to aid in their cause. Despite the dangers they faced, the love between Robin and Marian was a bright spot in the otherwise harsh life of an outlaw. Their affection for one another was built on mutual respect and shared ideals. Marian admired Robin not just for his bravery, but for his compassion toward the poor and his dedication to fighting against the tyranny of Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham. Robin, in turn, saw in Marian a strength and determination that matched his own, and he loved her all the more for it. Their love was not without its challenges. The Sheriff of Nottingham, ever jealous of Robin's ability to evade him, often tried to use Marian as a pawn in his schemes. In one story, the sheriff, having discovered Marian's connection to Robin, sought to force her into marriage, hoping to use her as leverage to capture the outlaw. But Marian, ever resourceful, outwitted the sheriff at every turn, delaying the marriage and secretly sending word to Robin. On the day of the forced wedding, Robin and the merry men stormed Nottingham Castle, rescuing Marian from the sheriff's clutches and escaping back to Sherwood Forest. In the safety of the forest, Robin and Marian's love grew stronger, and their bond became a symbol of hope for the people of Nottinghamshire. It was a love forged in the fires of resistance, strengthened by the hardships they faced together. In the quiet moments between raids, when the forest was still and the campfires burned low, Robin and Marian would speak of their dreams for the future. A time when King Richard would return to England, Prince John would be overthrown, and they could live freely without the threat of capture hanging over them. Maid Marian's courage and strength became legendary in their own right. She was not content to simply stand by and watch as Robin fought for justice. She took up arms alongside him, risking her life for the cause she believed in. Whether she was riding into battle with the merry men or sneaking into Nottingham in disguise, Marian's loyalty to Robin and to the people of England never wavered. Her bravery was matched only by her kindness, and she quickly became a beloved figure among the poor and oppressed, who saw in her the same spirit of defiance that they admired in Robin Hood. The love between Robin Hood and Maid Marian was more than just a romantic tale. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and a shared vision of a better world. Together, they defied the forces of greed and corruption, standing up for those who could not stand up for themselves. Their story became a beacon of hope for the people of Nottinghamshire, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and justice could prevail. As the legend of Robin Hood continued to grow, so too did the legend of Maid Marian. Her role in the story became a symbol of the power of love to inspire courage and strength in the face of overwhelming odds. And though Robin Hood may have been the leader of the merry men, it was clear to all who knew them that Maid Marian was every bit his equal, a force to be reckoned with in her own right. Throughout the legend of Robin Hood, the people of England endured the tyrannical rule of Prince John, the younger brother of the true king, Richard the Lionheart. Prince John had seized power while Richard was away, fighting in the Crusades, and his reign had been marked by greed, heavy taxes, and cruelty toward the common folk. But Robin Hood, like many of the people, held out hope that one day the rightful king would return to reclaim his throne and restore justice to the land. For years, Prince John had tightened his grip on the throne, all while spreading rumors that King Richard would never return from his battles in the Holy Land. The people of England grew weary under the weight of his oppressive rule, and the Sheriff of Nottingham, ever loyal to Prince John, enforced his laws with ruthless efficiency. Robin Hood and his merry men fought tirelessly against the injustices of Prince John's reign, but they knew that true peace and freedom would only come with the return of King Richard. News of the king's return reached Sherwood Forest one fateful day, carried by whispers and rumors that spread like wildfire through the villages and towns of Nottinghamshire. King Richard, they said, had been captured on his way back from the Crusades and held for ransom. While Prince John had done little to secure his brother's release, loyal subjects across the kingdom had raised the money needed to pay the ransom, and Richard was finally on his way back to England. For Robin Hood and his band of outlaws, the news was a glimmer of hope. They had fought for years against the corrupt officials and greedy nobles who had thrived under Prince John's rule, and now, at long last, the rightful king would return to set things right. But Robin knew that Prince John would not give up his power easily, and he feared that even with Richard's return, the fight for justice was far from over. When word came that King Richard had indeed returned to England, Robin Hood wasted no time. Disguised as a nobleman, he and a few of his most trusted merry men made their way to the royal court, hoping to meet the king in secret and pledge their loyalty to him. It was a risky plan. If they were discovered by Prince John's men, they would surely be captured and executed. But Robin's determination to meet the king outweighed the danger. In a quiet chamber of the royal palace, Robin finally came face to face with King Richard. The king, tall and noble, with the weary look of a man who had seen the horrors of war, greeted Robin not as an outlaw, but as a hero of the people. Word of Robin's deeds had reached even the ears of the king, and Richard, seeing the corruption that had flourished in his absence, understood the importance of the rebellion that Robin had led. With a solemn bow, Robin pledged his loyalty to King Richard, offering his bow and sword in service of the rightful king. Richard, moved by Robin's dedication to the cause of justice, assured him that Prince John's reign of terror would soon come to an end. The king promised to restore the laws of the land, reduce the crushing taxes, and bring the corrupt officials who had supported Prince John to justice. But King Richard also knew that the path to reclaiming his throne would not be easy. Prince John still held power, and many of the nobles and officials who had benefited from his rule would not willingly give up their wealth and influence. A final confrontation was inevitable, and Robin Hood, with his unmatched skill and knowledge of the land, would play a crucial role in securing Richard's rightful place on the throne. In the days that followed, Robin Hood and the merry men aided King Richard's forces in secret, gathering intelligence, disrupting Prince John's supply lines, and rallying the people to the king's cause. The people of Nottinghamshire, long oppressed by the sheriff's harsh rule, rose up in support of Richard, emboldened by the knowledge that their rightful king had returned. Robin's raids became even more daring, striking at the heart of Prince John's power. The sheriff of Nottingham, sensing the shift in power, grew increasingly desperate to capture Robin Hood. But no matter how many men he sent into Sherwood Forest, Robin and his merry men always seemed to vanish into the trees, striking back with precision and skill. The people's loyalty to Robin only grew stronger, and the sheriff's authority began to crumble. Finally, the day came when King Richard rode into Nottingham with his army, ready to reclaim his throne. Prince John, realizing that his time was up, fled the city in disgrace, leaving behind the corrupt officials who had served him so loyally. The sheriff of Nottingham, now powerless without Prince John's support, was arrested and brought before the king. In a moment of poetic justice, it was Robin Hood who escorted the disgraced sheriff to the royal court, where he would face the consequences of his actions. The people of Nottinghamshire, watching as their former oppressors were brought to justice, rejoiced in the streets, knowing that a new era of peace and fairness had begun. King Richard, true to his word, restored the laws of the land, easing the burden on the poor and dismantling the corrupt system that had flourished under his brother's rule. Robin Hood and his merry men were no longer outlaws, but heroes of the realm, their deeds honored by the king himself. For Robin, the return of King Richard was the fulfillment of a long-held hope, the dream of a fair and just England, where the people were free from tyranny and oppression. Though his days of living as an outlaw in Sherwood Forest were over, Robin's spirit of defiance and his commitment to justice would live on in the hearts of the people. And so, the legend of Robin Hood, the hero of Sherwood Forest, would endure, a symbol of hope, bravery, and the power of the common man to stand against injustice. With King Richard back on the throne, and Prince John's oppressive rule brought to an end, England entered a new era of peace and fairness. For Robin Hood and his band of merry men, the return of the rightful king marked the fulfillment of their long struggle against injustice. No longer outlaws living in the shadows, they were hailed as heroes by the people, their deeds celebrated across the land. But while Robin Hood's days of raiding the rich and outwitting the Sheriff of Nottingham had come to an end, his legacy would endure for generations to come. The story of Robin Hood is one of enduring legend, a tale of courage, justice, and loyalty that has captivated the hearts and minds of people for centuries. While some say Robin Hood was a real man, others believe he is a figure of myth, a symbol of the eternal fight against tyranny. Regardless of whether he truly lived, Robin Hood's story has become a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are those who will stand up for what is right. In the years that followed King Richard's return, Robin Hood and his merry men became the stuff of ballads and stories told around firesides. The people of Nottinghamshire, who had once looked to Robin as their protector, continued to celebrate his name, passing down tales of his bravery to their children and grandchildren. Sherwood Forest, once a refuge for outlaws, became a symbol of freedom and resistance, its towering trees and hidden paths forever linked to the legend of Robin Hood. As the years passed, the merry men each went their own way, some returning to their old lives, others continuing to serve the king in various ways. Little John, one of Robin's closest companions, returned to the peaceful life of the countryside. Known for his immense strength and loyalty, Little John had always been Robin's steadfast right hand. He remained in Sherwood for some time, but as the years passed, he settled into a quieter life, his days of adventure behind him. Yet, the stories of his feats alongside Robin Hood remained legendary. His duel with Robin on the bridge, his victories over the sheriff's men, and his unwavering friendship. Little John's legacy would live on as part of the enduring Robin Hood legend. Will Scarlet, the fiery and bold member of the Merry Men, continued to live life with the same passion and quick wit that had made him such a valuable companion to Robin. Some say he married and started a family, his restless spirit finding peace in the rolling hills near Sherwood Forest. His bravery and daring nature became legendary, especially in the tales told by those who had fought by his side in the battle against the Sheriff of Nottingham. Friar Tuck, the jolly and stout-hearted man of the cloth, returned to his religious duties, but he never gave up his love for good food, drink, and laughter. Known for his courage in battle and his love of life, Friar Tuck's contributions to Robin's cause were celebrated far and wide. The people remembered him as the kind-hearted friar who wasn't afraid to fight for what he believed in, and whose laughter could lighten even the darkest of times. As for Maid Marian, she continued to be Robin Hood's most trusted companion and love. Her bravery, intelligence, and unwavering dedication to justice had been instrumental in Robin's success. Together, they envisioned a future of peace, where the people of England could live without fear of oppression. Whether in the court of King Richard, or in the quiet, peaceful moments of Sherwood Forest, Marian's love for Robin never wavered. The two became symbols of hope and love, their bond immortalized in countless songs and stories. And what of Robin Hood himself? The tales of his later years vary. Some say that he and Maid Marian retired to live a peaceful life in the countryside, far from the danger and intrigue of their outlaw days. Others claim that Robin continued to fight for justice, even after the return of King Richard, helping to defend the weak and stand up to corruption wherever it appeared. No matter the version of the story, one thing is certain. Robin Hood remained a hero in the hearts of the people, a figure who represented fairness, courage, and the belief that one person can make a difference. In time, the stories of Robin Hood spread far beyond the borders of Nottinghamshire. His legend reached every corner of England, and eventually the world. Poets, playwrights, and storytellers continued to add to his tale, each generation finding inspiration in Robin's fight for justice and his devotion to the common people. Sherwood Forest became more than just a place. It became a symbol of resistance, where the downtrodden could find refuge and hope. Though the world changed, the spirit of Robin Hood's legend remained timeless. His story served as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, there is always room for resistance. His courage in standing up to those who abused their power, his loyalty to his friends, and his love for Maid Marian all became part of the fabric of the myth that has endured for centuries. Robin Hood, the hero of Sherwood Forest, may have lived centuries ago, or perhaps he never lived at all. But in the end, it didn't matter. His legend was greater than any one man, and his story continued to inspire those who longed for a better, fairer world. From the poorest villager to the wealthiest noble, the tales of Robin Hood's adventures offered hope that justice could prevail, that wrongs could be righted, and that even the smallest acts of defiance could spark a lasting change. And so, as the years passed, the story of Robin Hood, his merry men, and their adventures in Sherwood Forest lived on. A legend of resistance, bravery, and love that would never be forgotten. And so, the legend of Robin Hood, the hero of Sherwood Forest, lives on. His story, passed down through generations, is more than just a tale of an outlaw defying the powers that be. It is a story of hope, justice, and the unyielding belief that one person can make a difference in the face of oppression. From the tall trees of Sherwood to the bustling streets of Nottingham, Robin Hood's name has become a symbol of bravery and compassion, of fighting for the downtrodden and standing up against greed and corruption. In the heart of the legend lies a timeless truth, that the fight for fairness, equality, and the protection of the weak is a cause worth pursuing, no matter the odds. Robin Hood's story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there will always be those willing to stand up for what is right, those who refuse to allow injustice to reign unchecked. The characters in Robin Hood's world, Little John, Friar Tuck, Will Scarlet, Maid Marian, and even the Sheriff of Nottingham, have each left their mark on the tale, becoming part of a myth that transcends time and place. These figures, woven into the fabric of the story, serve as representations of the eternal struggle between good and evil, power and resistance, greed and generosity. And though Robin's adventures in Sherwood Forest may be long over, his spirit of defiance and his commitment to justice continue to inspire. The legend of Robin Hood has grown beyond the borders of England, becoming a global story that speaks to people of all ages and cultures. Whether told through song, ballad, or storybook, Robin Hood's exploits continue to captivate the imaginations of those who dream of a fairer, kinder world. In the end, it is not the historical accuracy of Robin Hood's story that matters most. It is the ideals he represents. His courage, his cleverness, and his compassion for the common people have made him a hero for all time. The trees of Sherwood Forest may no longer shelter outlaws, but they still stand tall, whispering the tales of Robin's legendary deeds to those who listen closely. As you close your eyes and drift into sleep, let the story of Robin Hood remind you of the power of courage, the strength of friendship, and the enduring belief that justice will always find a way. And somewhere, deep in the quiet woods of Sherwood, Robin Hood waits, bow in hand, heart full of hope, ready to fight for the next great cause.